work for Organizing for Action, or as we like to call it, OFA. I'm Deputy Digital Director overseeing editorial and content strategy, which means that I look at all the words, basically, on most of our content. We like to say that we at OFA are a volunteer-driven organization, because we have volunteers in 50 states. We have very small HQ staff. Our volunteers do almost everything for us, and they're amazing, amazing people. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how my role interacts with our volunteers and how we try to support that structure going forward. But David posed this question to me a few weeks ago: how do you build a movement? And I found it just a really fascinating question. A lot of those build kind of organically, and to me seem to have like a few key like pieces to it. I wanted to start out with this story. This is David and Connie. They are OFA volunteers. David is actually a state chapter lead in Nevada, and Connie runs a volunteer team in Nevada as well. And they met while volunteering for OFA, and just a few weeks ago got married. And we featured this story on our blog on BarackObama.com. I thought it was amazing. And I was going to draw this like really deep analogy to like how like a shared passion brings people together and shared emotional experiences. Like it's just something that like it's really loving, and naturally romantic relationships come out of that. But that's all BS. I just want to tell the story because it's awesome. But really, when we talk about the shared values that movements have, inspirational leaders help. Yeah, that definitely helps. Being able to rally around specific people. Symbolism, I think, is a really important thing. It's recognizing that people believe the same things as you, and symbols help with that. Common interests, being able to talk to people about the things that you care about, being able to see a spark in their eye when they believe the same things as you is really important. Shared emotional experiences, victories, defeats, going through the fire together. These are all really important things to me that are catalysts for movement building. But I think that the thing that sustains a movement, and the reason that I'm really excited that things like CMX actually exist, and that you are all here talking about community building, is that I think community is what actually keeps a movement sustained. And this is something that we are thinking about every single day at OFA, because we want to build a long-term grassroots movement that is working towards changes. We want this to be an evergreen organization because we are almost all volunteer-driven, and we're thinking constantly about how to keep those elements of a movement in place and how to foster and sustain a community within people who are working together towards a common goal, and sometimes doing really, really hard work. I actually talked to someone earlier, Emily, where are you? Emily, you want to raise your hand? Happened to mention that I work for OFA, and she was like, oh, I was an OFA chapter leader back in 2010 or something like that. And we immediately like sparked a conversation. We were like, oh, that's awesome. And she was like, yeah, it was really hard work. And I was like, yeah, I know it's really hard work. I just sit back and like write tweets and you do all the work. But thank you so much. But yeah, so it can be really grueling work. Like you're doing issues advocacy. You're trying to like move Congress, which historically does not want to move. You're trying to work with your state legislature. You're working on trying to get marriage equality passed in Illinois, which is something some of our volunteers just did. Or you're trying to get background checks, stronger background checks for gun sales in Washington, which is what some of our volunteers are working on right now. So this is not glorious or like sexy things on any given day. So how do you get a group of people who care about the same things to want to continue to be around each other and want to continue working towards that same goal? This is why I think community building is something that's really important. There's kind of a few different elements when we at OFA are thinking about like how our volunteers are working together. One is membership. We think about what makes someone feel like they are a part of OFA. The symbolism helps, and then I love this photo because this guy on his phone is like at one of our events, and he's clearly owning it, right? He's like, I'm a part of OFA, I got it on my phone. But what makes someone feel like they're part of OFA? We're really intentional about the language that we use when we talk about OFA as an organization. We don't use exclusionary language. We don't say, thank you for helping us do that, because you're part of OFA too. You did it too. So it's not just us. If you took an action, you signed up and you tweeted to your member of Congress, you did any number of actions that we allow you to do to be a part of it, you did that thing too. It's not just us. We are very intentional about making our membership, our walls for what it means to be membership, very transparent, and we want you to come under the fold that is OFA. Shared emotional experiences, I already talked about this a little bit, but our volunteers, what I really love about them, we have them at our HQ all the time. We're constantly doing trainings. We're trying to equip them on the latest issues. We're trying to tell them about what's going on in Congress, what they can be working on, or like giving them presentations about climate change and scaring the crap out of them, because climate change is really scary and it scares me every time I hear about it. And what I love about it is that I get to see the relationships that have naturally been built there. And I hear stories like somebody is crashing on somebody's couch while they're in town, or somebody helped someone move, or we talk about OFA like it's a family, because it is. It's like a family. We say if somebody goes off to do something awesome, we talk about how they're leaving the family, but we're still there for them. And it's very intentional language. We want it to feel like a family. At this point, there are thousands of people in the OFA family, which is a little crazy. And it's emotional. Another thing is something that we call bidirectional influence. This is actually a community psychology term, which basically means if you're going to be a part of a community, you have to feel like your voice matters in that community. So we're not at OFA HQ trying to hand down what you're supposed to be doing. We want to know from our volunteers from the ground up what our volunteers care about. We were founded to help advocate for the agenda that Americans voted for in 2012. But since then, we've heard from our volunteers that they care about any number of issues that weren't necessarily talked about in 2012. So how do our volunteers actually decide the agenda on the ground, and how can we empower them to do so? We're actually building a really interesting tool right now called Connect. That's actually just going to be a network for people working with OFA, for our volunteers, for our state chapter leads to talk to each other across states, which is something that they've had difficulty doing, to just like network with each other and communicate. So we have a saying called respect, empower, and include. And if we can build the tools at HQ to do that for our volunteers, we will be successful. And I don't know, the interesting thing about how OFA is structured right now is that we have state leads in every single state that are almost entirely volunteer-based, and they have digital leads that are volunteers, and they have press leads that are volunteers. We actually have our volunteers talk to the press on behalf of OFA, and that's something that we want them to do, which can be really scary. But we want the press knowing that they're out there because they want to be there, not because we're making them. Another great shot of our volunteers. So, I want to get a little conceptual now. I want to paint the picture of how I think about mission-driven communities specifically. So, I think when we think about communities, we think about it like this. You're in a community or you're not in it. You're a part of the circle or you're not a part of the circle, right? You're a Democrat or you're a Republican. You're a man or you're a woman. We think about it like you're in or you're out. And this is something that in mathematics we call set theory. And a few years ago, I'm going to get really nerdy on you now because I like to really nerd out on this stuff. A guy called Paul Heiberg wrote a book called Anthropological Reflections on Missiological Issues. And what he said was you can actually apply set theory to how communities organize themselves. And he was particularly interested in church communities, but I think it's actually pretty broadly applicable. And he said that what this does is exclude people. If you think about a community like this, there are a lot of people on the outside of this community looking in, and maybe they want to get in, but they don't really know how because you've set these really specific boundaries these really specific rules and values about what your community looks like, and that's really intimidating to people on the outside. And that's something especially at OFA where Barack Obama has a history of, as a community organizer, bringing new people into the political process, and we, as history of progressive organizers, want to bring new people into the political process. So it's really important to us that those boundaries are not that heavy, right? So the somewhat opposite of this, why is there a J in the middle? That used to be a heart. Lost in translation. So let's pretend, let's call this the J theory. But basically this is the opposite of that is called something called a centered set model, which means that it's not so much important who you are or what you believe or like what your history is, especially what your ideology is. What matters is where you're going and what actions you're taking to get there. So the people in the middle here, ooh, is this a laser pointer? I love laser pointers. Yes, the people in the middle here are, you can see the arrow, they're going in all kinds of directions. There might be some people headed straight towards the idea or the same direction you're going, and you believe the same things, and you value the same things, and they're like, yes, we're right there. And then there are some people who are kind of like that, like, yeah, I kind of get that, and I might on some days be going the same direction as you, and some days I might not. And then there's some people out on the outside who are like, I haven't even heard of you, I don't even know who you are, right? This is just kind of how naturally communities organize themselves, but the framework to me really helps think about when you talk about a mission-driven organization, if your values are at the center, what we care about is, do you value the same things as us, and how can we invite you into that journey with us? Not, are you this or are you that? So, if you look at it from that model with the J in the center, you can start to see like there are varying levels of, one, where people are along that journey. I joined OFA just about a year and a half ago, so for me this is still a relatively new journey. But I felt like I was folded in and brought in as part of the family really quickly, and I loved that because I was very intimidated. I was like, I don't have a history of organizing. I'm not crunchy. I haven't marched on Washington. Like, am I okay here? And a lot of people were like, yeah, you're totally okay. Thank you for doing this. And so, if we look at it like this, where people are on the spectrum means that we should talk to them differently, right? If you're way on the outside, maybe some mass communication, just some awareness tactics make sense for you because you don't know who we are and we need to do a little bit of explaining. If you're closer to the center, those tactics might not make any sense. Like, we need to treat you like we actually have a relationship with you and you know a little bit more about us, and how can we activate you and like get you out and taking action and doing things on our behalf. And the really interesting thing about this is that people will naturally cycle in and out of this. They'll naturally be going one direction or the other, and that's okay. You know, like, life changes, like, people in the family leave the family. It's natural. But if you're communicating to people where they are, then that's okay. And this is kind of how we think about our communication strategy in terms of bringing people into the fold. You may have seen it broken down like this. I feel like there's some like traditional marketing people who this would appeal to in terms of influencers and mass media. But the whole idea, if you've ever heard the term ladder of engagement, this is what the ladder of engagement looks like, right? You get people to take a really easy action on the outside that moves them up the ladder and makes them feel closer to that core value system that you have. And what that looks like at any given point is many different things. And this is really, I think from a community standpoint, what you guys can bring back to your organizations and your communications teams and your marketing teams and all the people who want to do this like one way, like get our email and get us new leads, and like what's our marketing funnel look like, and marketing funnels don't mean anything. The touch points of how people are moving in and out of your community means something. So all of a sudden, unsubscribe rates don't necessarily mean, you know, that your list or your picture is more pretty. They mean like, I might not be resonating with my community, and that might be turning people outside of it, and they might be leaving because they don't believe the same things anymore. It's just a different framework. So just to give you a little bit of some content examples from our end and show you like how we attempt to talk to people at those different levels and bring them into the fold. This is a tweet from our @OFA account talking about the minimum wage. And this is just an informational piece. It's meant like you don't know much about the minimum wage. Let's educate you a little bit. That's okay. But then maybe we ask you actually a little bit of a higher bar ask. You know what? You know about the minimum wage now. You might know that like it's pretty low. It hasn't been raised in 5 years, which is what that other article says. Now, if you think it's time to give America a raise, can you say so and sign our petition? It's a pretty low bar ask. I think we ask for an email address and a zip code. And then you get a wonderful email from us that says, hey, you care about the minimum wage. That's really great. We care about it too. Here's the thing that you can do today to actually make a difference in this. How many of you have been on our email list? Yeah, we send a lot of emails. That's okay. We do a lot of segmentation, hopefully, because we want to find people on that circle where they're at and what they care about. We don't want to assume what they care about. We educate you. Senate just failed to raise the wage. We want you to know if you care about that, like this is an issue you care about. So, and then we might ask you a little bit more. If you've taken those actions and you've tweeted to your member of Congress and you called and we know that you really care about this, we might ask you to come out to an event and take it a little bit deeper and actually meet people face to face and actually ask people to sign petitions face to face. And here are a couple of our wonderful state accounts tweeting photos of our volunteers actually doing that, which they do quite a bit. I love seeing this content come from the ground because it's just people out there doing it because they care about it. And then maybe you've become such an OFA fan that you've gone to our store and you're getting, you know, merchandise for your child. It says organizer in training. I'm going to read that. So the whole point is we're trying to make involvement as easy as possible, but at the same time invite you in. Seth Godin calls this permission marketing. We invite you to take a deeper level. I guess I just want to end with a challenge, and that is, what is your mission? Because I feel like we talked a lot about like, here's how our community grew, here's how it grew organically, like, here's how to reward people for being a part of our community, which is all very important. We talk about rewarding people for following us a lot, especially because it's easy to burn people out when you're constantly asking them to do something for you. But the reason I ask about what your mission is because I really believe that mission-driven communities are the future. Because I think that when you ask someone to do something, did you know, this is called the Ben Franklin effect. You guys heard about this, the Ben Franklin effect? When you ask someone to do something, they're more likely to do it and like you because they did it than if you actually offered to do something for them. So, and it's serious, and it works in the opposite way. Look it up. So I just, if you're looking to activate your community, instead of going to them constantly and saying, what can we do for you for them? What can we do for you? Maybe you should ask them what they can do, or like ask them to do something for you. And one of the examples I want to take for that is like, I asked for a couple song lyrics for this speech. I don't know how many of you responded. Some of you have really dirty minds. But like actually asking for that a little bit hopefully made you want to listen a little bit more, or made you like want to engage with me a little bit more. So just a parting thought. I believe that communities, especially if they really care about your brand, want to do things for you or want to be on a journey with you. And that's it. Thank you.